The more leaders, I don't care what leaders, bring in tech, AI, all of this technology, and it's all about protecting America, the more you are choosing the technology god to protect America and thereby pushing out the God that this country was founded on. I'm not saying leaders intend that. I think that most mean well. But they should learn from history, because God does protect this country, and it's often forgotten. So forgotten that God doesn't look kindly upon those that decide they are going to secure America so much that they disregard the Bill of Rights for American citizens, whether it's free speech or privacy, and using the idea that this is about protection. You know, we should have never won the Revolutionary War. It was a miracle. It was a series of missteps and weather and all of these things that where Washington and at different battles, whether it was the miracle at Brooklyn or Philadelphia or in New York, where they would narrowly escape because of a dense fog, because of weather, because it was against the British Army and Navy. I mean, nobody could really go up against them. We never should have won, but we did, because of unfortunate events that never should have happened to Britain, and because of all of these strange things that happened at each battle along the way. And one of the biggest things Americans in general did was pray. I think it was the revolution when the atheist himself, Ben Franklin, became a believer, because he was the one that said afterwards that they were fighting about writing the Constitution after they won. And he said, we need to go back to that praying thing, because that seemed to be working for us in the war. It would be good if people today could remember those things, because that's who we need to rely on. No amount of fortress over this country is stronger than God himself. And God himself expects the people to look to him to protect. I'm not saying that he doesn't want you to have no protection, but he doesn't want rights taken away from American citizens and using the excuse of safety. Because then when you do that, you're showing that you no longer want to rely on God. And there are some things, I don't care how expert somebody is, I don't care how wealthy they are, I don't care how popular they are, I don't care who they are. There are some things that you must just let go and let God and rely on him. And if God is ever leading a leader to believe that it is necessary to sacrifice constitutional rights for safety, then they should realize that they're being led by the wrong spirit. I'm just saying in general. Because it seems that our country's gotten very much away from, what was most important when it came to America, which was that God was ultimately our Iron Dome. And we are the Republic of Miracles, the Revolutionary War alone. Just read all of the different things that happened. It's just like, how could there be so many missteps? And so my point is that America went into the war with the Brits knowing that they were up against the best army in the world. And did they bring their best military equipment and have their best, strategies? Yes. But ultimately, the country prayed too. That's more powerful than any technology. And to me, I think that's what's been lost ever since 9/11. And I think there's been people that have wanted to get America to be so afraid about biological attacks and viruses and terrorist attacks that we forget that you have the ultimate protection, which is God. And God doesn't want this country to sacrifice its values, no matter how great the technology is, no matter how great AI is. Because when you have to sacrifice the very Constitution itself or parts of it because of safety, then you're sacrificing God with it, because it was God, the Constitution was God inspired because of events like the Revolution. And it goes back to those pilgrims and Puritans and people that came here and made those covenants with God that they would start this country on His word and Him being the leader. When you make technology become the leader, then don't expect to win. Because once you sacrifice the rights of American citizens and you let people do that, then you are sacrificing God's inspired plans for America. On June 19th, the Continental Congress had appointed George Washington as the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army. In mid-August 1776, Washington watched the vast British force pour onto Staten Island. Knowing that the battle was imminent, he wrote, "The day of the trial, which will in some measure decide the fate of America, is near at hand." And we won. And this is a true statement. No matter what secularists say, Christian prayer gave birth to America, absolutely, from the very beginning. So if you think that there's anything stronger, no matter how advanced your technology is, if you think that it's stronger than God, then your faith is lacking, and you're not realizing that most of the wins that America has won in her history has come because of the same type miracles that happened in the Revolutionary War. Somehow the enemy that's the most powerful has all of these missteps. Somehow there's a dense fog that comes over to where Washington and his troops can narrowly escape when they're cornered. Those were literal miracles to George Washington and many others, because we never should have won and we did. And that's something we should never forget nor sacrifice for tech's protection.